Good morning. Today is July 24th, and you're listening to the greatest love story taken from Jeremiah chapter 31 and verse 3, where God said, I have loved thee with an everlasting love. If you have members within your household, please invite them to join with us, and while you're doing that, we'll be sharing some updates. Next Sunday, we're going to talk about Jesus Christ as he begins his personal ministry, and we're going to be talking about the Sermon on the Mount in Matthew, the 5th chapter. And then the following Sunday, which will be 2 weeks from today, we're going to be talking about the subject of hell. We had mentioned that we're going to be talking about heaven, and then we're going to be talking about hell. And so that is going to be the subject 2 weeks from today. And then the following Sunday, we'll pick back up where Lot went his way and Abraham and Sarah went their way because there was not enough room for the cattle, and so the land would not sustain both of them, and they went their separate ways. And so we'll pick up with that, and we'll look forward to that programming. Now, I do have a mystery question for you this morning, and that is, it's going to be a little bit strange. But the question is, what was Abraham's religion before God called him? And so I want to ask you that question again so that you think, did I hear it right? The question is, what was Abraham's religion before God called him? And so we look forward to that mystery question, and I hope that you'll think about it and that you'll let me know what the answer to this mystery question is. And so today I'd like for us to review for a moment what happened with Abraham when God called him, and then we'll go forward from there. As you remember, we spoke about God calling Abraham, and he was 75 years of age when he left home and following God. And so he took with him his wife Sarah, and also they took with them their nephew Lot. And then the scripture indicates the souls of Haran, and also all their substance. And so it indicates to me that he was referring to the cattle and also the herdsmen that were watching over the cattle. And so then they make their way and they come to the land of Canaan. And so Abraham built an altar before God and called upon his name. And then he went into the mountains in the east of Bethel, and then he built another altar and he called again upon the name of the Lord. And then, as you remember, they continued southward, and so there was a famine in the land. And so they went down to Egypt, and Abraham, knowing that he was in danger, that his life would be in danger because his wife Sarah was very beautiful, and he knew that he would be killed if the people in Egypt and Pharaoh knew that she was his wife. And so he told her to say that she was his sister, which was true, that Sarah was Abraham's half sister, as we mentioned last week or 2 weeks ago. And then also we think about what happened as they went down, and Pharaoh entreated them and allowed them to stay with him. And he was of the assumption that Sarah was the sister of Abraham. And so God brought about plagues upon Pharaoh. And so Pharaoh, realizing that Sarah was the wife of Abraham, he said, why didn't you tell me that she was your wife? Because I would have taken her to be my wife. And so he told Abraham to take everything that he had and to leave. And then he told those within the land of Egypt about Abraham. And so they allowed them to leave. And this is where we pick up today, is where Abraham and his wife Sarah, and then also his nephew Lot, they went back to the mountain to the east of Bethel where they had been originally. And so Abraham built an altar before God. And so then at that point, there was a dispute among the herdsmen of Abraham and the herdsmen of Lot. And so then also there was not going to be enough substance to allow for them to have their cattle and to take care of them. And so Abraham told Lot to take a choice between what he wanted, and they would go their separate ways. And so Lot looked and he saw the plains of Jordan. He saw that it was well watered, and that was the land that he chose. And so Lot departed, and so he went down and he pitched his tent towards Sodom. And the scripture makes a very pointed reference that the men of Sodom were wicked and they were sinners, and the scripture says exceedingly. And so Lot was making a terrible choice, and we'll talk about that in just a few minutes. But then God told Abraham to look to the east, to the west, to the north, to the south, and this land would be his. And he told him to walk in it northward and southward and eastward and westward, and it would belong to him. And so he was going to make of Abraham a great nation, as he had indicated in another chapter in Genesis chapter 12 and chapter 13. And then Abraham went to the place called Mamre, and it was in Hebron. And so there he pitched his tent. And then the scripture also indicates how that Abraham, as he was serving God, and he and his wife Sarah. And then also I want to talk to you this morning as we close out about choices. Now Lot looked and he saw that the plain of Jordan was well watered, and so he chose Jordan, but he made a bad decision because it was toward Sodom and Gomorrah, and the scripture had indicated how wicked the men of Sodom were and that they were sinners exceedingly. And so he had made a bad decision, and the scripture indicates in 1 John, the second chapter, and verses 16 and 17, for the lust of the flesh and the lust of the eyes and the pride of life is not of the Father, but is of the world, and the world passeth away, and the lust thereof, but he that doeth the will of God abideth forever. And so Lot, when he was making the decision, he looked, and it was the lust of the eyes, because he looked upon it and he saw that the plain of Jordan was well watered, and he looked upon it, and so that was the decision that he had made. And then the scripture indicates that he went and he pitched his tent toward Sodom. And so we're going to be talking about Sodom and Gomorrah, how that Lot had put his family at risk, and how that ultimately he had lost his wife. And so we need to be making right decisions and right choices. And as we talk about choices, Joshua indicated in Joshua the 24th chapter and verse 15, and if it seem evil unto you to serve the Lord, choose you this day whom you will serve, whether the gods which your fathers served that were on the other side of the flood, or the gods of the Amorites in whose land ye dwell. But as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. And so Joshua made the right choice. He made the right decision. And this is the decision that you and I should make, is that we're going to serve the Lord. And then also we find that there is a danger how close that we might be toward being lost in eternity. The scripture indicates in 1 Peter, the 5th chapter, and verses 8 and 9, be sober, be vigilant, because your adversary, the devil, as a roaring lion, walketh about, seeking whom he may devour, whom resist steadfast in the flesh, knowing the same afflictions are accomplished in your brethren that are in the world. And so we need to be making the right choices and the right decisions. And one of the very concerns that I have is that there are many churches where the preachers are not speaking on the subject of heaven and hell, and they're not talking about the danger of being lost in hell, but they are talking about what I call a feel-good religion. And then whenever the invitation of the Lord is extended, there's no reference to being lost in eternity. And every time that we extend the invitation, we need to be talking about coming to Jesus Christ and being saved, being bed with the Lord in baptism, or if there's sin in our lives as we are Christians, that we're going to turn away from those things. And if we have sin in our life, to come forward and ask for God's forgiveness. And those are the things that we need to be thinking about. And preachers need to be sounding the alarm bell that there is a hell. And no doubt on the day of judgment, there are going to be many preachers that are going to be standing before God in judgment. And God is going to say, why did you not warn that there is a hell? And then there are going to be many that will be lost because they did not hear the truth about the living God, that there is a heaven and there is a hell, and there are consequences to the choices and the decisions that we make. And so I hope that we'll be making the right choice, making the right decision. And I want to thank each and every one of you this morning for joining us today. And I also want to thank Randall and Deborah for doing such a great job. And I want to encourage you to continue listening to them throughout the entire week. And so please be inviting others to join with us. And so remember the following programs that we'll be having. And then our mystery question was, what was Abraham's religion before God called him? And so till next Sunday, take care and God bless.